Before she died, Sophie's mom pressed a blue card into her hand and whispered, "When you need it most, this will take care of you." For 2 years, Sophie carried that card through homeless shelters and cold nights, never knowing what it meant. Until the day hunger forced her into the Imperial Trust Bank. A billionaire took her card with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. He was about to laugh her out of the building. Then he saw the balance, and his entire world stopped. What was on that card changed 3 lives forever. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a little girl named Sophie. She was only 10 years old, but life had already taught her lessons no child should ever have to learn. It was a gray morning in London, the kind of morning where the rain had just stopped, leaving puddles on the streets and a cold mist in the air that seemed to seep into your bones. Sophie stood outside the Imperial Trust Bank in the heart of the financial district. The building was enormous, all glass and steel, stretching into the sky like it was trying to escape the world below. She didn't belong there, and she knew it. Her clothes were worn and dirty. A coat 3 sizes too big, donated from a charity bin. Shoes with holes that let the rain soak through to her socks. Her brown hair was tangled and unwashed. But none of that mattered to Sophie right now. What mattered was the small plastic card she held in her trembling hands. It was blue. Faded. The edges were worn smooth from being touched so many times over the past 2 years. Before Sophie's mom died, she'd pressed this card into Sophie's palm in that cold hospital room and whispered with her last bit of strength, "Keep this safe, love. When you need it most, it will take care of you." Sophie had never understood what she meant. She tried to use it once to buy food, but the shopkeeper said it wasn't a normal card. So she'd kept it hidden in her pocket, protected it through homeless shelters and cold nights on park benches, carried it like it was the last piece of her mother she had left. Today, desperation had brought her here. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. The shelter she'd been staying at had run out of beds. Winter was coming, and Sophie was terrified of what would happen when the snow started to fall. So she'd walked to this massive bank, pushed through the heavy doors, and stepped into a world that made her feel smaller than she'd ever felt before. The lobby was like a palace. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Men and women in expensive suits rushing past with briefcases and mobile phones. Everyone looked successful. Everyone looked confident. Everyone looked like they had a place in the world. Everyone except Sophie. She could feel people staring as she walked toward the help desk. Not with kindness, with confusion, with judgment, with that look that said, "Why is she here?" Her cheeks burned with shame, but she forced herself to keep walking. All she wanted was simple, to find out if this card had anything on it. Even a pound would help. Even 50 pence meant she could buy something to eat. She just needed to know if her mum had left her something, anything to hold on to, or if she was truly, completely alone. The Imperial Trust Bank wasn't just any bank. It was where the wealthiest people in London managed their fortunes. That morning, the lobby buzzed with the energy of money and power. And sitting at a private consultation desk near the window was a man named Harrison Blake. Harrison wasn't just rich, he was legendary. At 48 years old, he built a real estate empire that owned properties across Europe. Luxury hotels, shopping centers, office towers in every major city. People said Harrison Blake could buy anything, and most of the time they were right. He sat there that morning in a suit that cost more than most people earned in a month, checking his phone and laughing with his assistant about a property deal he'd just closed. £7 million in profit. Before lunch, just another Tuesday. That's when he noticed the disturbance. A small, dirty girl was standing at the front counter, speaking quietly to one of the bank clerks. People were whispering, staring. Some looked uncomfortable, like her presence disrupted the polished atmosphere. The clerk, a gentle woman named Patricia Moore, was trying to help. She could see this child was desperate. When Sophie showed her the card, Patricia noticed something unusual, a special code on the back that meant it was connected to a very old, secured account. The only terminal that could access those kinds of accounts belonged to Harrison Blake. Patricia gently took Sophie's hand and led her across the shining floor toward the billionaire's desk. Sophie's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She could feel 100 eyes on her. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But she needed answers. Harrison looked up, his expression shifting from boredom to surprise. A homeless child? Being brought to his desk? He almost laughed. This had to be some kind of joke. Maybe a publicity stunt for charity. Maybe someone testing him? Mr. Blake, Patricia said softly, this young lady needs help accessing a legacy account. Her card requires your system. Harrison glanced at Sophie. She looked terrified. Her hands shook as she held out the worn card. He took it between 2 fingers, barely touching it, like it might be contaminated. His expensive watch glinted in the light as he turned the card over, examining it with thinly veiled amusement. A legacy account? For this street child? The whole situation was ridiculous. Harrison dealt with millionaires every day. Property tycoons. Investment bankers. Royalty. His clients had estates and vacation homes and collections of vintage cars. And now he was supposed to help a dirty little girl check her bank balance? He couldn't stop the smirk that crossed his face. All right, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Let's see what we've got here, shall we? He slid the card into his computer terminal, fully expecting to see an error message or maybe a few pounds if she was lucky. What appeared on the screen made his smile vanish instantly. His eyes went wide. His mouth actually opened in shock. That's impossible, he muttered, leaning closer to the monitor. His assistant stepped forward, looked at the screen, and gasped out loud. Patricia's hand flew to her chest. Around the lobby, people sensed something had changed. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Harrison stared at the numbers, refreshed the screen, and stared again. The balance on Sophie's account wasn't empty. It wasn't a few £100. It wasn't even a few thousand. It was staggering. Life-changing. The kind of wealth that made Harrison Blake, a billionaire himself, sit back in his chair in complete disbelief. Sophie stood there, confused, not understanding why everyone suddenly looked so shocked. Where did you get this card? Harrison asked, his voice completely different now. No mockery. No amusement. Just raw astonishment. My mom gave it to me, Sophie whispered. Before she died. She told me to keep it safe. Harrison's hands were actually shaking slightly as he pulled up the account details. And that's when he saw the name attached to it. The account had been created 6 years ago by a man named William Cross. Monthly contributions had been deposited automatically. Investments had been made. Interest had compounded year after year. The account was designed to remain untouched until Sophie turned 18, or until she desperately needed it. Today, her attempt to access it had triggered an emergency authorization. Harrison scrolled through the attached notes. There was a letter there, written by William Cross himself. Asterisk, to whoever reads this. Sophie's mother, Grace, worked as a hospice nurse. In my final months, when cancer was taking everything from me, she was the only person who treated me with dignity. My own children had abandoned me, fighting over my will before I was even gone. But Grace sat with me. She read to me. She held my hand when I was afraid. She made me feel human again. I have no one worthy of my estate. So I'm leaving it to the daughter of the only person who showed me real kindness. Please make sure she's cared for. Please make sure she knows her mother was extraordinary. William Cross, asterisk. Harrison sat frozen in his chair. The ragged little girl standing before him, the one he'd nearly laughed at, was now wealthier than most of his clients. And she had absolutely no idea. Before the story continues, subscribe. These stories are written to change lives. The massive lobby of the Imperial Trust Bank had gone completely silent. Harrison Blake, the man who commanded board meetings, who'd never been speechless in his entire life, sat staring at the screen, unable to form words. Sophie watched him nervously, her small voice barely audible. Is there anything on it? Even a little? Harrison looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. At the dirt on her face. at the fear and hope mixed in her eyes, at the way she gripped the edge of his desk like it was the only thing keeping her standing. 2 minutes ago, he'd been smirking at her. Now he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Genuine shame. "Sophie," he said softly, using her name for the first time. "Please sit down." Sophie hesitated, then climbed into the leather chair across from him. Her feet dangled, not touching the floor. Patricia knelt beside her, her voice gentle. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something important." By now, other bankers had gathered. People had stopped working. Everyone in the lobby sensed they were witnessing something extraordinary. "The card your mom gave you," Patricia continued carefully, "it's connected to a very special account." Sophie nodded, eyes wide and trusting. "How much is in it?" Harrison took a deep breath. He delivered financial news to wealthy people thousands of times. He told clients they'd made fortunes, lost fortunes, doubled their investments. But he'd never had to tell a homeless 10-year-old that she was suddenly one of the wealthiest children in England. "Sophie," he began slowly, "do you remember your mum working as a nurse?" Sophie nodded. "She took care of sick people. People who were dying." "That's right," Harrison said. "And one of those people was a man named William Cross. He was very sick. He didn't have much time left. And your mum, she was kind to him. She made him feel less alone." Tears began forming in Sophie's eyes at the mention of her mother. "Mr. Cross was very grateful," Harrison continued, his voice surprisingly gentle. "So, he did something incredible. He created a special account. Just for you. And he put money in it. A lot of money. And he made sure it would grow and be protected until you needed it." Sophie's lip trembled. "How much money?" Harrison glanced at Patricia, who nodded encouragingly. "Sophie," he said quietly, "you have £4.2 million in this account." The words seemed to float in the air between them. Sophie blinked. She didn't react. She couldn't, because she had no idea what that number meant. "Is that good?" she whispered. Several people in the watching crowd made small, heartbroken sounds, not mocking her, but moved by her innocence. "Yes, love," Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. "It means you never have to be hungry again. You never have to sleep outside. You never have to be afraid." Sophie's face crumpled. She'd been trying so hard to be brave, to survive, to make it through each day. And now someone was telling her the fight was over. She started crying, deep, shaking sobs that came from 2 years of fear and cold and hunger and loneliness. Patricia pulled her into a tight hug, and Sophie buried her face in the woman's shoulder. "Your mum loved you so much," Patricia whispered. "She made sure you'd be safe. She made sure you'd be taken care of." Harrison stood from his desk. This powerful man, this billionaire who'd built his reputation on being tough and unmovable, he had to turn away for a moment to collect himself. When he turned back, everything about him had changed. "Sophie," he said, his voice firm but kind, "I'm going to make you a promise. I'm going to protect this money for you. I'm going to make sure no one takes advantage of you. And I'm going to help you find somewhere safe to stay while we arrange everything properly." He turned to his assistant. "Call the Dorchester Hotel. Book their best suite. Have them send up food, anything she wants. And get me the best child welfare solicitor in London. Immediately." His assistant rushed to comply. Harrison knelt down so he was eye level with Sophie. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Do you understand? You have people who will help you now." Sophie nodded through her tears. But for the first time in 2 years, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Word spread quickly through London's financial circles. Not as gossip, but as something that made people stop and think. Harrison Blake, known for his ruthless business deals, for his cold negotiations, for caring only about profit, had spent his entire afternoon making sure a homeless child was safe. He'd canceled 4 meetings. He'd personally contacted child services to ensure Sophie wouldn't be lost in the system. He'd assembled a team of lawyers and financial advisors whose only job was to protect her interests. And he'd paid for 6 months at the Dorchester Hotel from his own pocket, just to give her somewhere warm and safe while everything was sorted out. The man who'd nearly laughed at her was now moving heaven and earth to protect her. By evening, Sophie was sitting in a hotel suite that was bigger than any place she'd ever lived. There was a bathroom with hot water, a bed with clean sheets, a room service menu with more food than she could imagine. Patricia had stayed with her, helping her order dinner, running her a bath, finding her clean clothes that actually fit. "Why are they being so nice to me?" Sophie asked quietly, wrapped in a fluffy hotel bathrobe, eating chocolate cake. Patricia smiled. "Because your mom was kind to someone when no one else was. And that kindness is coming back to you now." "I miss her," Sophie whispered. "I know, love. But she's watching over you. And she'd be so happy to see you safe." The next morning, Harrison arrived at the hotel with news. He'd found a foster family, a warm, loving couple named the Harises who'd been vetted thoroughly and who were genuinely excited to welcome Sophie into their home. "They live in Surrey," Harrison explained. "Nice house, big garden. They have a daughter about your age. They want to meet you if you're comfortable with that." Sophie nodded nervously. Over the next few weeks, something beautiful happened. Sophie moved in with the Harises. She started school for the first time in 2 years. She made friends. She laughed again. Harrison set up a trust that would pay for her education, her living expenses, and ensure she'd never want for anything, but structured so she'd learn responsibility and the value of money as she grew. He also did something unexpected. He started a foundation in William Cross's name, dedicated to helping children who'd lost parents. Real help. Housing. Education. Therapy. Everything Sophie had needed but never received. "Why are you doing all this?" Patricia asked him one day when he was reviewing the foundation's first projects. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because a 10-year-old girl taught me something I'd forgotten. That wealth means nothing if you use it only for yourself." He looked out the window of his office, across the London skyline. "I've spent my whole life building an empire," he continued. "Making money, acquiring properties, winning deals. And I was proud of it. But when I saw the number on Sophie's account, I realized something." "What's that?" Patricia asked gently. "William Cross, a man I never met, did more good with his money in one single act than I've done in my entire career. He changed one child's life completely. And that mattered more than all my hotels and shopping centers combined." Patricia smiled. "It's not too late to change that." "I know," Harrison said. "And I'm trying." 1 year later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Sophie stood in the garden of her new home in Surrey. She was 11 now, healthier, happier. Her hair was clean and braided. She wore a yellow dress and shoes that fit properly. The Harises had adopted her officially 3 months ago. She had a family. She had a home. She had a future. But she hadn't forgotten where she came from. Inside the house, there was a small ceremony happening. Harrison Blake was there, along with Patricia and several children from the William Cross Foundation. They were unveiling a plaque, a memorial to Sophie's mother, Grace, and to William Cross, whose kindness had started everything. Sophie read the inscription aloud, her voice steady and clear. Asterisk, in memory of Grace and William, 2 people who proved that kindness never dies. It multiplies. Asterisk. Everyone clapped. Several people wiped tears from their eyes. Afterward, Harrison pulled Sophie aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a small box. Inside was the blue card, the one her mother had given her. But now it was encased in glass, mounted like a piece of art. "I thought you might want to keep it safe," Harrison said. "To remember." Sophie held the frame carefully, looking at the worn card that had changed her life. "I'll never forget," she said quietly. "My mom told me to keep it safe. And she was right. It did take care of me." Harrison knelt down so he was at her level. "Your mom did more than that, Sophie. She taught you something that took me 48 years to learn." "What's that?" "That the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't money. It's kindness. It's time. It's caring when no one else does." He paused. "Your mom gave that to William Cross when he was dying. And he gave it back to you. And now we're giving it to other children who need it." Sophie hugged him. This powerful billionaire. This man who'd almost laughed at her. "Thank you for helping me," she whispered. "No, Sophie," Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." As the party continued, as children played in the garden, as Sophie laughed with her new sister, Harrison stood watching it all. He thought about that rainy morning a year ago, about the dirty little girl who'd walked into his bank, about how close he'd come to dismissing her, to turning her away, to missing the most important lesson of his life. He thought about all the times he'd judged people by their appearance, all the times he'd valued money over humanity, all the years he'd wasted chasing wealth without purpose. And he made himself a promise. Never again. From that day forward, Harrison Blake became known not just for his business success, but for his generosity. The William Cross Foundation grew, helping hundreds of children. He personally mentored young people from difficult backgrounds. He used his wealth to create real change. And whenever someone asked him why he'd changed, he'd smile and say, "A 10-year-old girl taught me that miracles are real, and that sometimes they come wrapped in the most unexpected packages." Sophie kept that framed card in her room for the rest of her life, not because of the money it represented, but because it reminded her of three important truths: that her mother's love had protected her even after she was gone, that kindness creates ripples that touch lives in ways we can't imagine, and that you should never judge someone by what they look like, because you never know what miracle they might be carrying in their pocket. Final message, asterisk. Sometimes the most broken-looking people are carrying the most precious gifts. Sometimes the person everyone ignores is the one who will change your life forever. And sometimes a simple act of kindness, like a nurse holding a dying man's hand, can create miracles that last generations. Sophie's mother never knew what her kindness would become. William Cross never met the little girl his generosity would save. Harrison Blake never expected a homeless child to transform his entire understanding of wealth. But that's how real change happens. Quietly. Unexpectedly. Through ordinary people choosing to be kind when no one's watching. If this story touched your heart, remember, you have the power to be someone's miracle too. Not with millions of pounds, but with simple kindness. With seeing people when everyone else looks away. With caring when it's inconvenient. Because you never know whose life you might change. And you never know what ripples your kindness might create.
Choose to be kind. Choose to see people.
Choose to care. The world needs more people like Grace. Like William. Like the person Harrison became. The world needs more miracles. And miracles start with you. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons. Follow for part 2.